not a leg, it's an arm. Googled it. You know, a lot of the time we refer to animals that walk on four legs as four legs, but essentially they're still arms. 2 legs and 2 arms. So they're actually walking on their legs and their arms. They don't have 4 legs, because the arm bones are the same as our arm bones, just they're walking on all fours. And what might appear to be front knees are actually just a front wrist joint, and what appeared to be a back knee joint actually is just a back ankle joint. But his legs are mostly hidden. I'm going to see if we can get a better view of him from the other side, because we've got the sun in the wrong place. Let's just go up a little bit further and see if we can get a better view. Oops. Well, good to see Will Fox again. Got some news about Tara. Tara's busy at the Leopard Project in the Lydenburg area, and Marjo, and there was another young lady with them, heading back to Lydenburg to the Leopard Project. I'm really going to see. Oh my, look at that, Becky is a yellow-throated longclaw in the sun. More important than a giraffe, because we can see giraffe along many times. But we're not going to get the yellow-throated longclaw in the tree like that, as good as it is. That's for the birders. That's for World Birdwatch and RC in the Netherlands, and those of you who are into your birds. Look at that yellow-throated longclaw. Beautiful light on it. I don't know how much of a zoom you've got on it, but not great. No. I wonder if I can get a photo of it. You know, being a longclaw, which is related to the pipits and mostly, I suppose, the pipits, they're mostly grassland birds, and they're mostly on the ground, and very, very seldom do you see them up like this. It's only when they get flushed out of the grasses that they'll sit in a tree. Even I might have to try digital zoom. Okay, off he's gone. So, giraffe. Maybe if we're lucky, we're going to move from that tree to this lovely, perfectly shaped Acacia nilotica just to the right of him. But for the time being, browsing on a little bit of or rather a smaller acacia behind this dead one. At the moment, not a great view. And maybe just the angle that I was viewing from earlier, his front wrist joints seem quite fine. He was just probably resting his leg. So, nothing wrong with this old man. Giggle from Becky in the back there. Hello, Eric. Excuse me. What's Eric's surname? Brown. Hello, Eric. I'm glad you're with us. And we have to try and find a different way to view this giraffe. Now, Eric is asking a question that's quite interesting, because it's going to require a little bit of thought for me. from me. We'll go around the other way back here, but it's going to put this giraffe into the sunlight on that other road. We're not going to be able to see him from here anymore. Lovely big old bull. Oh, look what I found on the road. Wonder how that happened. Yeah, it's my fault. Okay, we go. But Eric was saying, Eric is in the UK. Where's Eric? Yeah. Leicestershire. Isn't that where Tara comes from? Leicestershire. Leicester. Leicester. It's not Leicestershire. I never know how to pronounce those shires. Very nice to meet you, Eric, although we haven't met, and I hope we do one day. And hello to Moira, if Moira is there too. But Eric was saying that the most numerous, the most, what's it? Prolific, thank you. Most prolific animal in the UK is a rat. It'd be interesting to know what species a rat is, because it is possibly one that's fun. Yeah, but it might have some bearing on the whole thing. What did you do? You just brushed something with a brush and it made things go beep. And this giraffe has moved a little bit too far in, and it's not going to be easy to see him now because we're looking into the sun, and I can't go off road for a giraffe. Although there, oh, that's quite nice. There's a bird on his head. Just that profile. That is pretty. But yes, a type of rat that is the most prolific animal in the UK, and Eric wanting to know, you have to turn your head, giraffe. It was a nice shot. What is the most prolific animal in South Africa? You mean apart from Homo sapiens? Actually, I think it's time for a reclassification of the hominid family tree, because it's no longer Homo sapiens, it's Homo destructus. But the most prolific, Eric, that's quite a question, because the most widely distributed doesn't necessarily mean the most prolific. You know, things like the slender mongoose or the common duiker or even impala. Although impala are in huge numbers, but the common duiker is more prolific than the impala. But I would imagine that it must be some species of rodent. It's gonna require some thought. Maybe something like one of the rodent species, maybe a mouse species, like one of the striped field mouse, or also some rodent species that has found human habitation and human settlements, the ideal habitat, and they proliferated. They're over prolific in these areas. Is that all in your way, this little wattle? And there's a car coming that we need to move away from. But so we're going to leave this old man and find our way. So Nico. to answer. It's not something that comes to mind immediately. That's what I could think of. I mean, obviously things like the cat, the domestic cat, that has now obviously become feral in large areas. Cats, or even the feral pigeon. But I'm sure it's probably a rodent species. But maybe somebody can do a Google search for me. But I mean, be specific about it. Most prolific animal in South Africa, most prolific mammal in South Africa, and see if something comes up. And then Andy can let me know. But to be honest, I can't think of something off at the top of my head that dogs. But are we talking about domestic animals that have gone feral? Because then we're talking about dogs and cats, pigeons that have become feral. Or are we talking about indigenous wild animals? What is the most prolific? Because even then, I would need to give it some serious thought. Not an easy question to answer at all. They're both off, I think. Oh, they're both recording. That's what they're doing. They're recording for about 4.5 minutes now. Hello, GoPros. Hero 2s. So you've got to press something there that stops them recording. And I need to go do. No, because they're in the middle of recording. So you've got to stop the recording. It's not working. Okay, then switch them on again. Okay. So I tried to get a giraffe, but he wasn't playing ball. Try another one somewhere. Well, I think it's Friday. Okay, copy. Stand by one. For us, it's not easy to remember what day it is because there's no differentiation between days of the week and weekend. But I seem to recall it just only a couple of days ago saying TGIF. I might have to say it again. But I hope we've got some people from all over the world with us. And if you have any questions or you want to tell us that you're viewing and where you're viewing from, nice to know where our viewers are viewing from. And we have obviously some of our regulars from North America and Britain and New Zealand and Australia and Germany. But it'd be interesting to find out if there are any other special parts of the world where people might be. Okay, G was asking about the jigger. Is the steering wheel crooked? It doesn't seem round. That's not a perfect circle, I guess you could say. I mean, it doesn't have to be round. It's a Land Rover steering wheel. It's ergonomically designed so that it's being elliptical. But I'm making things up now. But okay, interesting observation. No, it's not exactly round. But I guess you're going to have to write to Land Rover and ask them about that one. Unless it's from me sitting on the steering wheel that warps it a little bit. But it still turns the wheels in the right direction. So I think for now, let's just say let's not fix something that ain't broke. Jordan, as in Amman Jordan. Amber? That's interesting. Hello, Amber. Amber's asking if there are a lot of lion on the reserve. I wouldn't say a lot, Amber. We have two main prides of lion. Of course, lion are able to get through fences and things. There's always a possibility that there might be individuals that we don't know about that come in from outside the reserve, even though it is a fenced reserve. But we have what we call the Southern Pride. It's the Black Dam Pride, and they consist of one old female, the Black Dam female, her 3 cubs, which are now probably about 4 years old, I suppose. There were 2 males and or rather 2 females and a male in the Black Dam Pride, her children. And there are 4 young cubs, 2 of about 10 months and 2 of about 4 months, and then the young male who we spent time with this morning sleeping, and yesterday we spent time with him roaring. And that's the Black Dam Pride, which is the pride that we're mostly concerned about down here in the south. The pride up in the north, I'm not too familiar with the composition there yet. Maybe one of these days we'll be able to get up there and see them. For now, might be an idea to just wander around for an hour or two, and then as we're getting close to sunset, we'll go up to the northeast, up to that area we were in this morning where that male was, the young male from the Black Dam Pride, see if we can pick up on him and find him, because he might be waking up. Get to him. But no, not a lot of lion on the reserve. Lion have fairly large territories, and the size of Thornybush, being a self-contained reserve, is only really, well, I couldn't really say with accuracy or with conviction that it is big enough for 1 or 2 prides, because the size of a pride's territory depends on so many factors. It depends on the type of habitat, because the habitat and the type of trees or the composition of the habitat dictate the density of prey species, and the density of prey species dictates the density of lion, or the extent of a lion pride's territory. It's never a fixed figure. The more sparse the vegetation, obviously the fewer the herbivores, and so therefore the bigger the lion's territory to be able to cover an area big enough to find their prey. And in areas where there's a higher density of vegetation, there's a higher density of prey species, and so lion's territory doesn't necessarily have to be so big. So there's never a fixed figure. You can't really say that lion's territory is a particular size. And having only really seen the southern limit of Thornybush, well, I haven't really ventured north yet, because the odd occasion that we haven't had our broadcast running, that I've been able to go out and try and find some things for filming purposes, just to get some content for our 3D series. Those times I haven't really traveled very far, because I've found the content and I've been able to film things, or we have been able to film things, but I haven't really ventured that far north to see any real change in the habitat. But especially down south here, it's really, really dense. And it indicates to me that lion territories don't necessarily have to be that big, because in some places, lion's territory could encompass one lion's territory could encompass the entire thorny bush area if it was a lot more sparsely vegetated. But under the circumstances, there seem to be two prides here, because it's dense enough and there's a higher density of prey species. So we need to learn a little bit more about the lion pride up in the north. Somebody's playing here with the sand. Trying to channel the water, but of course you can't. Can't direct subsurface water flow. Hello, Amy. Amy's in Minnesota. And Becky's found another giraffe. But it's going to be into the sun, so we're going to need to try and find a way to look at him. Lovely old man. Huge old bull. And I'm going to try and turn here and see if we can... Gosh, look at him. His ears are half the size of the average giraffe. Is it no good? That's great. I'm gonna have to wait. I have to wait for him to move. Very interesting that he's feeding on Tamboti. There's no way of getting around him to the west, which would be nice if we could. We need to train these giraffe better to be on the other side of the road so that we're looking at them in a different light. But this is an old man. His ears are really, really tattered. Really old boy. For Eric. If you Google the most prolific animal in Africa, they just come up with antelope and grazing species. And we need to be a bit more specific than that. But I still think it's got to be something more. Got to be something more specific. I wonder if we can maybe just squeeze part. We'll try that. Let me go around a little bit. Let's just try a different angle. This isn't really any good. And he's going to move anyway. Very kind of you to move, young man. Old man. Young old man. A grandpa giraffe. With Eric object if we called him Eric. At least he's not half a bee. There we go, that's quite nice. Nice. Quite unusual, the fact that he's feeding on Tambuti. He was feeding on Tambuti. Hello Jerry, nice to hear from Jerry. And Jerry was asking about lioness, or lion, and whether lion would push out their female cubs the way a leopard would. No, not at all. In fact, it's the female lion cubs, the lionesses, the young lionesses that actually become the new core of the pride. They stay within the pride area and they become the new core of the pride. He's wandering down to the river. Maybe, and he's going into the crossing that we just crossed, maybe he's going to even drink down there. So we'll just follow him and see. This is that old bull that walks with a very stiff gait. Must be a little bit of arthritis there. Okay, I'm not going to force him because it's very sticky for a giraffe to go through soft sand and water. So I don't want to stress him out too much. He's got to find his own way through here. Soft sand, water, very vulnerable point for a giraffe. Lion know this, and this is why lions tend to chase them into a place like that, where they're likely to slip or stumble. And then climbing up the other side. Well, let's follow him a little bit. We might get some nice views of him feeding if he stands in the right side of the sun. Actually, what might be nice right now is being down below him and having so much above us. No, he's walking. I was hoping he'd stop there so we could be down here in this crossing and he would be up there on the slope, on the bank. Looks like maybe children have been playing here. Yeah, we think we've got problems with our antenna. Giraffes have problems with their heads. They've got to get through these areas. Especially a boy like this. I mean, he must be close on 20 feet, 18, 20 feet tall. I think just up to his shoulders got to be a good maybe 10 feet. No, maybe not that much. At least 8 to 10. He's a big old man. Very interesting that he was eating on the green Tambuti leaves. Now, if we were to even touch the milk that comes out of the Tambuti tree, when you break a leaf, you get this white milky latex. If we were just to touch that and get it on our hands and then say eat an apple or eat something with our hands, we would get rather an upset stomach. We wouldn't feel very well. And yet he's able to eat these green leaves. I am following you, but I'm not following you for nefarious reasons, old man. I just want to see you. Okay, so I'm going to pretend that I'm going in the opposite direction. And then we'll come around. getting quite curious what we're doing. But hello, old chap. I have seen him before. He's got quite a serious scar across the top of his snout, just in front of his eyes. Scar in the back of the neck. This is an old man. This is a chap that's seen a lot of life in the last, I'd say, maybe quarter century, 25 odd years or so. Giraffe don't really live much past 30, I don't think. Still feeding on young tambuti leaves. Very interesting. Look, to Brianna in Texas. Brianna wanting to know if they live in herds or mostly solitary lives. And, well, it depends. Females, giraffe cows, the ladies' giraffe, they tend to live in groups. They are social animals, and they tend to live in groups with their youngsters, although it's not that unusual or that impossible to find a giraffe cow on her own. Bulls, on the other hand, you do find these old bulls on their own. You might find younger bulls in bachelor herds. So it's a little bit of everything, Brianna, because the older bulls are solitary, and then they will hook up with, or they'll meet up with some of the family groups when females are in estrus. We don't have the dynamic of a dominant bull with a herd of females and he protects them. It's more a case of the females and the calves move around on their own, and they don't have territories, they just move through areas. Bulls don't necessarily have territories, they have home ranges, or they have areas that they mostly utilize at different times of the year so that they know where the trees are, just areas that they've grown up in, which is why one tends to maybe see the same giraffe from time to time, and they might pick up on the estrus scent of females, and then they'll join a group of females and vie for dominance with other bulls to be able to mate with those females. But there isn't really a strict rule of whether they need to be solitary or they need to be in a group. The other thing is, of course, is that giraffe, being the kind of animal that they are, being so tall, even if they were in a herd, you might find a herd or a group of giraffe, what we call a journey of giraffe or a tower of giraffe. They might be spread out over some distance, and you might just find one. You might come across one giraffe and you might think it's alone. And this is the thing about nature and about Africa, especially in this type of terrain and this type of habitat, is that very, very often we come across an individual and we don't really know that it's on its own, but we can only see it on its own because of the density of the vegetation around us. We have no idea what there might be 10 or 20 or even 100 yards away. And for giraffe, somewhat like elephant, but not to the same extent, but somewhat like elephant, they can be traveling a few hundred yards apart, but they'll still be together. And there is a new theory now that maybe giraffe do have some sort of low frequency communication or something that allows them to communicate. And I've seen some really strange things how giraffe come together out of the blue, and well, it's not so out of the blue as one might imagine. Let's see if we can move forward a little bit and see him again. He's down behind the trees. But the concept of being alone in the animal kingdom is very, very different to what we as humans think of as being alone, because they don't have to be right next to each other to be together. They could be considerable distances apart but still be together, because they're still moving together, they're still somehow communicating with each other. Is his head hidden? Yeah. Unfortunately, standing in the shade is not great for filming, and two low hanging branches that we can't really see his head. A very healthy old man. He's been through the wars a little bit. His ears are tattered and perhaps half the size that they should be. And I'm actually wondering whether the conditions that we're experiencing now, with the hole in the ozone layer and higher risks for skin cancer, is actually starting to affect animals, because I've seen cheetah, who are predominantly diurnal hunters, starting to get sort of cauliflower ear type syndrome, and skin starting to be affected by sunlight. And an old man like this, those ears are seriously worn. It's something we don't really consider when we think of the UV factors nowadays on the weather. When the summer comes along and the weather actually advertises the UV risk. You ever see that? Yeah, not so much in the UK, no. But certainly down here, especially in the Cape and down along the coast, the beach goers, every day on the weather they give a factor of, or a number, and that's supposed to relate to the UV risk. But of course we don't think about the children that live in nature's children, the animals that move around and are susceptible to excessive amounts of UVB radiation. It's all very well we put on sunblock. Some of these animals can't. Would be an interesting study. Okay, well, we're going to leave this old man. We're going to carry on. Eric, I'm not implying you're an old man. Bye-bye, old man. Old boy. Giraffe, I mean. Question now from Hot Dallas. I think Dallas might be a place I can visit, because Linda says, well, mostly it's hot in Dallas. Sometimes in the winter Linda says not so hot Dallas. But Linda's wanting to know about the giraffe species, and there's a lot to be said about all the different species and whether or not they're able to interbreed. There's a lot of speculation as to whether they are individual species or whether they're subspecies. Subspecies can interbreed, but they are subspecies because there's geographical isolation that has created the subspecies. and the different patterns. So yes, I suppose if they were to be able to get together, there's a remote possibility that they could interbreed, but because there are geographical boundaries that prevent them from coming into contact with each other, interbreeding is not really possible, because it's the very thing that has created the subspecies. The fact that geographical isolation has isolated the same species in different areas, and they've adapted to the environment and have creating different subspecies. But it's only now through genetics that we're starting to understand true speciation and true identification of species, and whether they are subspecies or individual species. And I don't think enough work has been done on giraffes as yet as to whether they are true species or whether it's true speciation or whether it is merely subspecies. But as a subspecies, yes, they would be able to interbreed if they were able to get to these different areas. Tora was asking a question, North Carolina, Charlotte, and I kind of forgot. What was Tora's question? Because I can't remember. It wasn't really giraffe related. Linda was asking what species. We just know it as the southern giraffe, Linda. Linda has to hot balance. There was one question that came through with this giraffe that I wanted to hold off for a bit, but I forgot what it was a couple of questions ago. No, not that one. There was another non-giraffe question. Yeah, maybe that one. Who was that from? Sorry, Becky, just slip a little bit. That crossing is very tricky. It's like going down a deep stuff. And now we're into the sun. Oh, it was Amy, sorry. What kind of fencing, Amy, in Minnesota? What type of fencing we have? Where are you, Amy, in Minnesota? Which part of Minnesota? St. Paul, Minneapolis, maybe up near Moorhead. Very special person lives up near Moorhead. Amy was asking what type of fencing we have here in thorny bush. What's it made of? Well, standard game fencing. You get a couple of different types of game fencing. This fencing is galvanized wire, and depending on what type of animals you have within a reserve, the law requires different types of fencing or different levels of fencing, and I haven't counted the strands, but I'm guessing it's about a 17-strand game fence. But there are also, it is also, it's not the whole fence that is electrified, but there are electrified wires at different intervals from the ground up over and above the main game fencing. Not much I can tell you about it. It's a fence. It's a fence. The radio's got to say. Listening to the other radio briefly. See what the guys are found this afternoon. I want to try and get back to where that male lion was this morning. See if we can find it. And thanks, Amy. Amy's saying she's about an hour south of Minneapolis. Too much talk there. That's what it was for Charlotte in North Carolina. What type of equipment do we have on the jigger? Hello, Nyala. We don't have a Nyala on the jigger. A young bull. Three bulls. That's a big one. One at the back is huge, but he's in some thick bush. And animals are not really playing ball today. They're all on the western side of the road, so they're all into the sun. But maybe these boys might move out. There's two younger bulls. There's a really big old man here. He's huge. Just coming through the bushes now. And hopefully, come this way, old man. Come inside. He's the Nyala equivalent of that big old giraffe that we saw. He's incredible. He's probably like a record Nyala, I would say. I don't think I've seen a Nyala that big. Horns almost kudu size. Oh, she's huge. equipment we have on the jigger. I don't know, if I had to tell you, I'd have to... It's classified information. So basically, we've got broadcast equipment on the jigger, kind of stuff that you might find in an outside broadcast vehicle from a TV studio that goes to sporting events or that does a live news feed for their 6 o'clock news kind of thing. But I can't really reveal too much because it's a secret. And if I tell you a secret, then I might just have to... I'm joking. Are we going to get to see this big old boy? I'd like to, because he's a magnificent Nyala bull, just feeding just in some very thick bush at the moment, and I'm hoping that he's going to move out into a more open patch. 2 younger bulls with him, obviously learning from him, and no doubt they spend a little bit of time sparring for them to learn a little bit of sparring or strutting techniques. Nyala have a unique way of establishing and maintaining dominance. They don't really spar so much as the other antelope do. They have a dance that they perform. And this has resulted in all of these unique features about Nyala that you don't find in other antelope. We've got this ridge of hair along the back that they're able to erect, and it stands up as a very white ridge along the back. He is already displaying to these younger bulls as he's moving through the bush. But they have these incredible tails that they can fan out, and all to make them look bigger and more imposing. And I suppose in some ways it's a way of preventing them from having to go as far as head-butting and physical fighting. But here he is, he's coming out into the open shortly. Sadly, right into the sun. Is it any good? It's not the best. Maybe we can go forward and turn around a little bit. You can never really train animals to be on the right side of the sun. Gosh, he's big. Look at him. Sure, he's a big boy. I don't think I've ever seen a Nyala that big. He's nearly like a bongo. He's so big. And no doubt very proud. I'm going to move up a little bit. Yeah. Okay, bye boys. Very difficult looking into the sun at them. neither do I. Interesting question from Tora back in Charlotte, North Carolina. Charlotte was asking, and I suppose we should still be with Dinyala so that we could actually hone in on it, but they have that white chevron on the nose, and there are a lot of the, well, not a lot, but the one of the features of some of the spiral horned antelope that the family that Dinyala belongs to have that white chevron, kudu as well. And Charlotte wanting to know what the purpose of that is. Well, usually we find white markings on the face close to the eyes, a marking that actually helps with nocturnal vision, because what it does is it reflects a little bit more light into the eye. I think it's a little bit of that, but there's also another aspect to it, because it's that in conjunction with the other markings of Dinyala. You can't take that on its own. Because standing alone, it doesn't really mean anything. And of course, it'd be nice to find, when the next time we do find Nyala, I'll be able to show you that in conjunction with the other markings highlights the posture of the Nyala, or the antelope that has that kind of a marking, because the posture of the head, the angle of the white marking, can be a subtle difference between a threatening display or an acquiescence, or a dominance display. Just really, really subtle signs in body language that has resulted in these markings to highlight the posture of the animal that tells an opponent the status of the animal. It's why so many different animals have especially black and white markings, and you can never take a marking for it on its own merit for where it is and what it is, because it's always got to be taken in conjunction with markings on the ear, markings on the chest, or markings on the rest of the face, and of course if there are markings on the ear, the positions of the ear, or ears rather. So a lot of it has got to do with the body language, the non-verbal communication that is vital, especially in the prey species, because they can't go around verbalizing or vocalizing their intentions or they just can't go vocalizing. The quieter they are, the less chance they have of being noted by predators. Oh, look at this! And I can't drive. You're not going to be able to go anywhere for some time now. I'm going to just try and... Which side do you want, left or right side? That is a line of processionary caterpillars. And would it be easier on the right if I turn to the left, put it over the right, over my right shoulder? This is really incredible. I've shown you, for those of you who've been with me, I've shown you some processionary caterpillars on trees and stuff, but these are processionary caterpillars on the marsh. Is that too close? Can you see that? Especially there in front. I'm going to go down there and put my fingers next to it, my toes. You're going to be able to see a little bit more. Maybe switch mics so that, I don't know, maybe you could hear me. Okay, what I want to show you is this. Can you see this? There appears to have been... Can you hear me?
Yeah, just hold on. Okay. Yep.
Do you want a diamond necklace, Becky?
Not really, no.
Okay, it's not quite diamonds, it's quartz. Okay, this is from a procession that has been through here already, and obviously there's a lot more to these caterpillars than we're seeing right now. But this was a column of caterpillars that has been passed already, and each caterpillar lays down a little strand of silk, so when you get a couple of hundred caterpillars, the strands become so intermingled that it becomes quite a strong, well, not that strong, not as strong as spider silk, but it's a fairly strong line of silk that picks up a lot of sand. So each caterpillar that we see in the line is actually laying down a little thread of silk for the one behind it to follow. That's one individual caterpillar. Very, very hairy.
Hold it still.
It doesn't know where to go because it hasn't got a strand of silk to follow. But I'll put it back on the line in a minute. I thought I'd show you. Okay, I can put it back now.
Yeah.
Are you on me with my fingers?
No.
No. Can you see my fingers? Okay, now I'm messing up the line now. Can you? I suppose you can't really see much, can you?
A long line of caterpillars.
Okay, it's really hard to get close to them with the camera and to show you the true wonder of it all. And I don't know, we might even have to turn around because it can take an hour for these caterpillars to cross the road. But they're what we call processionary caterpillars. They turn into the processionary moth. Although as a moth they don't do any processions. But each caterpillar lays down a very thin strand of silk as it moves along. And because they're communal caterpillars, they actually need to feed together. That's something that they need to do for protection purposes. Not that really that many things that eat them, because they are hairy. But it's just one of those wonders of nature that is quite incredible, that they have these long lines and they follow, this time of the year, they follow each other from one food source to another. But now I've disturbed them, and I should never have done that. But at least because they have this line of silk, all I have to do is guide them back onto this road of silk that they're each following, and they should follow the rest of the crowd. But I don't know, I can't imagine driving over them. The car coming.
Put a little sign up.
Pardon?
Put a little sign up.
Little sign. Caterpillar crossing. Okay. Can you draw that quickly? But that's the best I can do, just move them all off, and they're all in a pile, and that's how they sleep at night anyway, so they'll all figure it out. But that's the only way I can do it, really. There's certain things that I have to wait for, and some things that I can't. To wait for those caterpillars would be dark before they'd be crossing the road. They take such a long time. But all the silk is together, and they're all together, and they'll regroup. It's better than driving over them. I couldn't imagine driving over them. When I was younger, we used to take the front one and curl the silk around to touch the back one, and then sit and watch as they went round in circles for a little while, and then we'd yes, when I was younger, I used to do things I'm not proud of. But couldn't dream of driving over them. Hello, dear. Question from dear regarding my processionary caterpillars. How many caterpillars usually in a line? How long is the line? And how does the first one know where to go, because there's no silk to follow of the first one? Well, that part of the question is quite interesting, because obviously the first one is the one that decides where to go. And well, really what it is that they just hang on, I've got to get through this, try and put the antenna through this little gap and not touch anything. There we go. There's no real set number. There could be 3 caterpillars in a line, there could be 300 caterpillars in a line, and it depends on the size of them, because that depends on whether they're in their 3rd instar, their 4th instar. It depends on which state of the larva that they're in, whether they're close to pupating or not, and that determines the size of the caterpillar, and that determines the length of the caterpillar column. So it's nothing fixed. It's nothing that I could say that, oh, it's always 20 caterpillars and it's always 2 feet long. different every single time you see it. It's never the same. And sometimes when they're a lot smaller, before they've molted a few times, you can have fewer caterpillars. But because the caterpillars are smaller, they're in a different state of their larval stage. They're smaller, and because they're smaller, obviously there's never a figure, dear. There's never unless you're just winding me up and you just wanted me to answer a question with it depends. It does depend on so many things. But one of nature's wonders. As far as the first caterpillar is concerned, that doesn't have a silk trail to follow or another caterpillar to follow. And I don't know what determines who's first in line. I have no idea how that is determined. It is exhausted their food supply on a particular bush, and they need to go to another. Obviously, the first one is the one that is going to have to take them to a new. Obviously, that's the one that has to take them to a new food source. And all it really is that first one just has to crawl along the ground until it comes across its host plant, and then they all climb into the host plant. That's where they'll spend the next few days or however long it takes to deplete the food on the host plant. And then once that happens, it's time to pupate and become the moths that they then become. But that's a question that just begs for an answer that starts with it. Depends on how many, depends on how big, depends. Invariably, the caterpillars that are together are all the same. They're all siblings, as it were, because they all come out of the same egg mass that was laid by the parent moth. And they stick together throughout their larval stage until they become moths themselves, and then fly off to find other moths so that they can make more caterpillars. A little bit difficult going into the sun, but we do need to just head to the west a little bit, northwest. Hello, Donna. Donna's asking why no shoes. Oh, I don't know. No answer to that. Let me ask the question, Donna. Why shoes? Shoes. I guess I've got shoes underneath my feet right now. I put my feet on top of them because the floorboards get really, really hot in the Land Rover from the gearbox. So I do have shoes that I put my feet on top of, make track, and I've tried to explain it many, many times why no shoes. Because I was born without shoes, and because my life, this is my life. I'm as much part of this as those caterpillars, as the elephants, and everything else. I am a fish out of water in the human world. I don't know how to compete with humans. I don't know how to be a human in the human world. I only know how to be a human in an elephant world. And sometimes I just wish I was an elephant. I'm going to lose a little bit of signal here, so I'm going to pause for a bit. I do when I'm at home on my own. Where no one can see me but the animals, and I promise you they don't judge. I had in my binoculars. Don't even touch. Don't go there. sometimes if there are humans around, I put on a quick coin. Yeah, well, fortunately, when I'm at home, there aren't any vehicles full of guests. I can wander around to my heart's content. I don't know if any of you picked up that little bit of conversation between Becky and I. Hopefully not. There's something to be said for... No, I'm not even going to go there. But yes, about being no shoes, or not having shoes, or not wearing shoes. Something was in here, in this little mud pool, and walked across the road. Maybe looked small enough to be water. Walked across the road, dripping mud. I'm all for feeling the energy of the universe and being part of the energy field of our planet, and especially picking up the energy that life, that nature, that the life around me. You can't live in this environment and not feel the energy of every living creature. I mean, we've got such a diversity of plant and animal life here that to try and be a human in this, you're detracting from feeling it and being a part of it. And so for me personally, because I live in it, because it is my life, and because I'm so passionate about it, being barefoot and feeling it all, and feeling the energy of the planet coming through the earth into my body, shoes take so much away from that. But there's also putting my footprint where a lion put his foot, or an elephant. I was about 5 years old when I was first jumping from elephant footprint to elephant footprint, and now that I'm 10 times that age, just being able to do the same thing. At least I don't have to jump, I can sort of stretch. But it's the same feeling. It's that feeling of putting my foot where nature has put their feet. I don't know if I can quite explain it, but there's something about being barefoot. There's something about feeling the earth, feeling life. Anyways, I found a skull. This is not a duiker. The duiker's horns stand much further apart. It's not a steenbok. I'm wondering if it's not maybe a young. It's not a young. It's actually it's a big male. Judging by the size and age of these horns, whether it's not a grysbok. I'm actually puzzled. I have to be honest. Normally I know these things, but this is rather strange. A lot of stuff still on the skull. I'm going to take the bottom jaw out of it, because I'd like to be able to clean up the skull. Very, very worn teeth. This is a really old male. Some of his molars are so badly worn. It looks like he had an abscess on one of his teeth here. You can see where infection. Can you see this? Where infection has actually eaten away at the jawbone, so he had a pretty bad tooth infection at some point. That's not normal. tooth wear on this old man is quite unusual. There are no visible signs of course, the skin that is left on his skull is not telling me anything because insects have eaten at it, and I'd need to be able to remove a lot of the skin to be able to get the skull removed from it. It is still articulated with some of its cervical vertebrae. The first, there's the axial and the C2. So the first two vertebrae of his skull are still there. Very, very old teeth. His teeth are very, very worn. And there's a remote possibility that he could have even died of old age. What do you want me to do? Like that. There's a possibility that he might have even died of old age. I'm not seeing any marks on the skull that are indicative of something grabbing him around the head. Of course, it could well be that something grabbed him around the throat. But the one thing that is very clear to me is that this part of the skull is still intact. And if this was a leopard kill, it would be far too small for a lion. If a lion had killed this animal, the skull wouldn't be as complete as it is. A lion, being such a small antelope, would have eaten most of it, almost would have crushed the entire skull, maybe left the horns or something. The hair can give me a little bit of an indication. It's very, very pale, and that's why I'm starting to think either reedbuck, maybe, or gracebuck, but definitely not a duiker, and I don't think a steenbuck. Steenbuck's got straight horns, doesn't have these curved horns, so it could be a reedbuck, or it could be I'm going to look in my book quickly. It's kind of difficult to tell. As much as I've lived in the bush all my life, I'm really puzzled at who this was. And the fact that there's still so much skin on the neck. That's an interesting thing, and I'm going to take him with us because it's something that I'd like to study further. So the only way to learn things is actually to do this kind of stuff, and it's old. That skin is very, very dry. Sometime during the summer. Where is CVS Pharmacy? Kills 99.99%. Okay, well, let's just hope it's not that 0.001% that is here. But I keep this stuff especially for these purposes, that I can sanitize my hands, because who knows what I might do with them. Right, now while we're here, look, there's not really much happening this afternoon. The radio hasn't been very active. It's been windy all day. It's an autumn day with the leaves falling, making a lot of noise. Not many animals about. There's some yellow flowers of the Crassula vaginata. Let me find my mammal book while we're here. So it's more like a day of just questions and interaction. And as the sun goes down, we're now going to head towards where that lion was, and hopefully we can find him. Or he might still be there somewhere. Don't know if he is. But who could this have been? A little antelope, not a duiker, because a duiker's horns are much further apart. So he's not a duiker. There we go. You see why I think it's a gracebuck? Pardon? Because of the slight curve, but there's the shafts, and also the shafts still a little bit far apart. Can't be a Sunni. I mean, it looks almost just like a Sunni, but Sunni don't occur. I don't think Sunni even occur here. Steenbuck's horns are too far apart, but it could Arabi, maybe. Right color for Arabi, but would we even get an Arabi here? It's an interesting skull, that's for sure. It's a very interesting skull. It's not one of our common antelope. There's a rebuck. It's not a rebuck. One of the big bucks, we definitely don't get reed. Then let's go to the reedbuck. Now reedbuck have got too much of a curve. The southern reedbuck. So by process of elimination, one of the only things that I can think of, of the dwarf antelopes, maybe an Oroby. The Chracebuck that I thought it might have been, the Chracebuck is horns are too far apart and too small. Steenbuck, horns are too far apart. But the Oroby is one antelope that and I'm just looking here, this very deep concave portion of the skull that could hold a preorbital gland that the Oroby has. But what's really confusing me is the gap between these horns, because the Steenbuck and the Dake are the two common dwarf antelope that we have here, and the not so common Chracebuck, the Chracebuck's smaller and stubbier horns. The growth on these horns is incredible. I mean, there's got to be 10 or more years, 12 years or more in the growth rings on these horns. I'm going to need to consult some of my colleagues on that one, but it's not a common skull. It's something that I haven't ever seen before. Well, not ever seen. It's something we don't find. And yes, having touched it again, let me refresh. Okay. Very, very interesting. But that one. No offense, Donna, not at all. Not at all. Glad I could answer it for you, but I know there are people that feel that are offended that I don't wear shoes. That's my life. I've lived in the bush. I live barefoot. It's kind of hard this time of the year because there are a lot of things that are seeding now that have thorns. And yes, I get thorns in my feet all the time. I've got thorns in my feet as we speak. Thorns that are even going a little bit. Look at those grasshoppers. We've seen them already earlier, but all hatching now. I don't know if you can. There's a little bit too much in the way of them. Better. Oh, starting to disturb them. I want you to observe what we're seeing here. We've seen like these. We've seen those caterpillars that are communal, that are living in a big tight group, and now these hatchling grasshoppers that are what we call the foam grasshoppers or the phagomorphic grasshoppers emerge from their eggs, and they too, coming out this time of the year, they too spend their time in groups, very, very tight groups, both to conserve energy and heat, but also to protect themselves. Interesting phenomena in nature. when I was in New York, actually, not in Manhattan, I felt it prudent to put shoes on to go into Manhattan, but I was staying with friends over the river, over the East River in Brooklyn Heights actually. And I used to take a walk almost every day while I was there. I was only there for a short while, but I would walk the boardwalk. I'd go down onto the boardwalk. And almost identical clothing, and I got khaki shorts, hats, and sometimes I'd have a different color shirt on, but I don't have many other clothes. In fact, to be honest with you, I don't even own any shoes. I own a pair of $2 sandals from a cheap kind of $2 store because I go through them a lot. The times that I do have to wear sandals, which is mostly in the summer evenings, because that's when the scorpions and some of the venomous snakes come out on the ground, and I don't want to stand on them because I don't want to hurt them, but also don't want them to hurt me. I don't have a pair of shoes. I own a pair of hiking boots, a pair of Caterpillar, really rugged boots that I use for bushwalks. When I'm with clients and I've got to go off-road and we're walking through the bush, I can't be picky about where I put my feet, so there are times when I do wear boots, especially if I'm doing a 5-hour, 6-hour walk through the bush. It's imperative that I wear my boots. But that's all I own. And of course, a couple of weeks ago I bought myself a pair of slippers, little pseudo fluffy, cheap $2 slippers. They just keep my feet warm at night, but they're all synthetic, and I only wear them when my feet are cold because I have to stand on concrete. That's the weirdest thing, is that I can spend all my life barefoot in the bush and my feet never get cold, but as soon as I stand on concrete, a human-made substance, then my feet cold and then I get sick. It's like it draws all the energy out of me. But other than that, if I had to go to a wedding or, God forbid, a funeral, I'd actually have to go and buy some shoes. Was that a purple crested lory? There's babblers. There is purple crested lory. It's just in there. Can you see him? Yeah, it is. The youngster. There's two. Go back into the drainage side, maybe we can. Oh, they're up there and there's some bushes. It's unusual having them so far away from the river, but this is a drainage line. And I wish we could just get this bird on camera. There it is. There it is. Stay there, bird. Stay there. I hope RC or any of our other birders are here. Dave Hill or Sharon even, Austria, or of course it's in the shade, we're not going to get its colouring, but it has the most beautiful colours, and it's about to fly. The purple crested Turaka. How's it looking on cam? Fairly small. Pete in Cape Town, Pete Bright. Looks like a youngster. It's a small individual. It's raising its purple crest. The most gorgeous colours in this bird. Not to mention the crimson primary feathers in its wings. Go on. Well done anyway. Google if you want to see this bird in its full. Oh, it's flown and showed its crimson wings. Actually, they're not crimson. The wings, the color in the wings is known as taurocine. Touracine, and its name is a Turako. Touraco, Turako. Yeah, and they might be in the sun too. So if you want to have a look at what this bird looks like, if you want to do a quick Google search, those of you who are watching, Google purple crested turaco, T-O-U-R-A-C-O. They're in that tree now. Okay, going into the back. So two young turacos, most incredible coloured birds that we'll ever see. Oh, radio's making too much noise again. So, where were we? All sorts of other things other than the big animals today, and different questions, all sorts of things. If you want to send us a question, drive questions at wildearth.tv. I'd also like to know two special youngsters in Holland, Julia and Lucas. Just tell you that your grandma was here today. And I don't think you speak English, but maybe someone can translate. Marjo Mark was here visiting us today. Going to the leopard project with Wolf Fox. To a leopard project. There's another giraffe. Becky, you want a giraffe today? There's another giraffe. That might be nice actually, up the road with that silhouette if he doesn't leave the road. Okay, copied. And that's from who? Oh, please spell the name for me. Oh. P-Y. Hi. Portland in Oregon. Only time I ever saw Portland in Oregon was flying out after doing a bat study down south on the Mackenzie River. Way down south actually. Had to drive all the way up to Portland to fly back to Chicago, New York. Hello, Pi. Yesterday with the lion calling, I was saying how far the lion's call, the lion's roar can be heard. And Pi is asking, is that by lion or is that heard by humans? Well, I guess we don't really know how far it can be heard by lion, but we certainly know how far it can be heard by humans. I'm going to stop here because this giraffe is approaching us. And that actually might be quite nice, the way it's coming down the road, over the mitre drains, a little bit ungainly because of the slope sometimes. What does it look like, Becky? Is it okay, if we sit really, really quietly and still, then he might think that we're the part of the road and it's going to walk all over us. As it comes closer, it's going to climb on the bonnet and then step over us and climb over the camera. He's walking in a straight line. So but we've been seen. We're now a target. Brace yourself, Becky. The giraffe has spotted us. If he flicks his tail, it means he's going into attack mode. I guess we're lucky he didn't flick his tail. Okay, sometimes my sense of humor can run away with me. Only kidding. No known cases of giraffe attacking humans, to my knowledge. off into the bush and it's a little bit thick. You just sort of see the top of his head sticking out. But I think he's coming back to the road. So maybe if we go up a little bit, just turn him around. Might come back to the road. No, he's not. Confirm, David. Hello, David. Interesting question. David in the UK. Hi, I don't recall. David. David. Welcome to our drive. I don't recall hearing from you before, but then maybe I'm wrong because sometimes I don't really know which David it is. But nice question, David, asking about those processionary caterpillars and wanting to know if there's any physical or any defense that they have, because what is stopping a bird from coming along and just gobbling up all of them? Well, I don't know if we managed to see when I had one on my hand. They're very, very hairy. And hairy caterpillars, that is their defense. They have hairs all over them. Now, some of the hairy caterpillars, not this particular species, because these hairy caterpillars don't have irritating hairs, but most of the hairy caterpillars have a little tuft of hair, very dark, very short hairs, and a very dense brush of them at the back of their abdomen that are their defense mechanism. Basically what happens is these hairs can be released and they become serious irritant to whatever it is that might be aggressing them. And so just the fact that they are hairy caterpillars is enough of a defense, and nothing's really going to touch them. A bird can't swallow it with all those hairs. Sometimes you'll get hornbills that will take a hairy caterpillar and it'll wipe it in the sand, it'll wipe it on a branch or something to try and get the hairs off of it. But it has to be really desperate to eat a hairy caterpillar, and it's so much energy to get one little caterpillar, to get all the hairs off of it, that to go through a whole procession of them, it's not really worth the effort. So that is their defense, the fact that they are hairy caterpillars. Brianna in Texas. No. Simple answer from Brianna's question. I haven't heard a thing. Brianna was asking if I've heard anything about the hyena cub from 2 years ago. It wouldn't be a cub anymore. But there was a hyena cub 3 years ago, well, 2 years ago, that we were watching, that we named Teddy. Seb named it Teddy, I think. But it was, I think, Seb that had this really intimate relationship with hyena. Not a pitching. Seb now has his own. Oh, we've got an unlocked. And no signal. No, Diana, about little Teddy, unfortunately, and hopefully the signal will be a little bit stable now. I'm just trying to head back and timing it quite nicely because the sun is about to set. I know we're quite far from home, so be it. Not going to see much of sunset, not see anything except hope signal. Just getting in that area. back where we saw this lion this morning. He's not here, but we're going to go up to this little dam because I'm guessing that maybe he's headed up to the... Or he could be anywhere in this. Anywhere. Very far, must have been up. Okay, maybe better than I've stopped. I don't know where he was when we drove past here, because we came to where he had been lying this morning. I didn't see him, but in driving past him and going to look for him at this little dam just to the west of us, I thought he might have been there. And as we stopped there and I had to fix the antenna, I heard him calling. So he's only just woken up. You can see he's having a bit of a bad hair day there. Let's go a little bit closer. Got his back for us. Hopefully signal will be strong. Hello Boyki, we're back again, it's us. Signal. Can you not sleep in an area where we do? I'm going to move slowly. Okay, that's good. Okay, so we sort of hanging on the edge of our signal range. Just had to maneuver, and once again we found our little boy. And I don't know, I wonder, he couldn't have been lying too far off the road. But he's just been roaring. I'm hoping that in this late evening or early evening, late afternoon, still air, the wind has dropped completely. I'm hoping he's going to call again, because I'm sure there might have been people that missed it the other day. But, just incredible. We found him. Just want to advertise the fact that I have to. All stations 1 Mandodongala on Dingans Road, just east of Dingans Dam. Yeah, affirmative. Oh, you're welcome, Gareth. Same lock. Yeah, I also drove right past him, but he's just woken up and he's been calling, so I managed to find him, and now he's come up to the road. Okay, cool. You beautiful boy. I need to take some photographs of you. Oh, he's so close to us. He's only about, what, maybe 12 feet from me. Serious bad head. He's just woken up. He's got, what do you call it, bedhead. Listen, listen. The sound. That was that was absolutely incredible. Can you do that again, please? We didn't hear it. It was a little bit too faint. Can you do that again, please, young man? This time I'm using my little video function on this little camera. Folks, this is the pinnacle. This is the ultimate moment of visiting Africa. I know you know that I love, I know that you know, and I know that you know that I know. Sorry. But I know you know how much I love elephants and how much elephants enthrall me, and that my life is not complete without elephants. But having said that, there is nothing on this planet, there's nothing like sitting this close to a male lion in this cool air when there's not a breath of wind, and the vibration of that deep, deep, guttural roar shakes your bones. I mean, it's vibrating small little pieces of this Land Rover that are not tied down properly. It is the most incredible sound that you will ever hear. And I know that some of you can't visit Africa, so I can only hope that through our medium of Wild Earth and through our being able to come to you live from Africa, that you have been able to experience a little bit. And I also hope that I haven't driven any of your pets wild. Well, not me, but he hasn't driven any of your pets wild. We did have a couple of emails from people saying that some animals react to it and some don't. But wow.
Do you want to listen to it further?
Well, I think it'll be different from listening to him.
It's like loud.
Is it really?
Yeah. Is it?
Okay, next time he calls, maybe.
Yeah.
Is this mic still on?
No.
Oh.
It's a big
That's just that was worth driving all this way and stopping for caterpillars and grasshoppers, and I have to go back and apologize to all of those caterpillars for leaving them in a big clump. But it was certainly better than driving over some of them or having to turn around. I guess I could have turned around and gone the other way, and then who knows, we might have found something completely different. But life is what it is. You poor child, you poor dejected, lonely little boy. What are we going to do with you? Head on paws. Would you like to borrow my brush? Because you just woken up and that hair of yours standing up is just not very elegant. Look at the size of his paws. That paw is almost as big as his head. I did manage to get that recorded on my camera, my little camera, but I want him to do it again now because I wasn't zoomed in. There we go, I'm going to call again. What did you hear? 350 buffalo. And I can only hope that I can sort out why my computer is not connecting to the internet, so that I could post this on Facebook. Okay, we're ready for you to call before this car gets here, boy, because Gareth's coming with his guests. And I don't want the sound of car disturbing your rule. There must be something moving down there in the drainage line, because he's listening to something down there. You gonna call for me? Us? Hi.
No, he wasn't there when you came home.
Oh, that was beautiful. I managed to... Oh, look, what's that? Bateleur. Shimungwe. Something. Okay, I managed to capture that one nicely because I just kind of knew that it was going to yawn. Next, you just go from the yawn straight into the raw. That was fantastic. Waiting on the gain.
The game is almost...
Oh, it's still on 0.
Huh?
0. No gain or?
No, game.
One gain.
No.
It's coming down there.
What's your hurt?
So maybe we should start moving a bit. Wonder. Hmm?
Let's give him a hug.
Okay.
Slowly.
Okay.
Camera's recording. Make sure the camera's recording.
But we're starting to lose light for this cam, so maybe it's time to move on. Your lock. Hi. At him, I hope. Yeah. Hopefully down south they'll make an appearance. One and I'm starting my car now, Boykie. Hope you're not going to mind. I think we drove right past. Well, no, I don't think we did. Just drive right. This is leading to Madodangala on Dingaan Road. Let me just get back into signal. You're going to have my we'll do something like that. I think we're in the Lion. I think we've third episode. Lion. Yeah, we might also before I just lose you. So everybody, we're a little bit late. We're maybe a few minutes late, but that's not really why it is. It's quite far from home. There was something come through. I think that was the closest yet that we're roaring, and it was the most incredible in this cool, still evening. Unlock. Okay, and this little stretch as soon as I start going in. Okay, but at least you coming back much better. You got from 1 out of 5 to about 3 out of 5 now. No, I think I'll just explain that, look, it's getting dark, we don't have much time. We've got to drive, we've got to be here, so ask questions. Okay, sounds good. Some of you might have still stuck around after the end of what was supposed to be the end of our drive. But we're far away from home, it's getting dark, the cameras don't really do too well in this, but since we've got to drive and we're going to be in signal range, make our way back closer to camp, there were some questions that came through while we were with that line, and I hope some of you managed to join us for that. That was incredible, it was just absolutely incredible. Sitting right, instead of having him walking around roaring, we had him right next to us, even facing us. but rather comical in that towards the end of his roar, you could just almost see how he's reaching the end of his tether here. He's not tether, but he's, I think it's almost like a depression. This poor boy. He's roaring and nobody's answering, and towards the end of his roar, he puts his head on his paws and he's like, "Oh, me." Kind of a little type of poor baby. Of course, we don't have to feel sorry for him. He's a male lion. He's a sub-adult big male lion in Africa. He's supposedly the king of the jungle, although we don't have jungle. King of the beasts. Well, I suppose we don't really have beasts. He's king of the bush. Don't say that too loud. Don't let the elephants hear that, because they don't really appreciate it very much, because there's nothing more regal or more dominant or more free and kingly than an elephant. But okay, we'll let the lion believe that they're king, and Walt Disney. And so while we're driving, even though it's dark, you might sort of see a little faint hint of light in front of the vehicle. You're not going to see me much, but there were some questions while I'm driving back to camp. I might as well just answer some of those questions. Otherwise, it's got to drive back in the side tonight. So, go for it, Andy. Who's first? Lion questions. Deer. How long will it be before he's ready to eat again after the kill the other day, and will he hunt for his own food? Dear, it's like you asking me for answering. Asking me to start the answer with "it depends." Okay, well, here it goes. The thing is, it's all a case of opportunism in nature, and it could be tonight or it could be a week. There's no set time period. It was a stick, it wasn't a caterpillar. Something in the road. Yeah, there is. Another one of those big grey things. Not an elephant. Okay, I've got to switch the lights off because I have to. He could hunt on his own. He could wait for those females to come back and help him hunt. Only being an opportunist, but also he could hunt or anything. That deer is any time I think of between now and perhaps much this morning. I've got a roadblock, blobs of grey set up on because they don't like it. Excuse me a moment. I'm not even gonna. Excuse me, children. What a lovely post-sunset sky. This could take forever. So here we are, dark, sunset, glow, silhouetting the trees to my right. Not even, it's actually quite a lovely temperature. I'm being held up by a couple walking slowly along the road, and animals, I can't really put the lights on them, we can't really see them. I don't want to push them. That this male will try and make his own kill, that he'll wait until the females move. The rest of the crowd will. We don't really know what. We don't really have into their minds and what they. But the view side of the whole thing is that we're going to be able to follow for the next. It might actually very well moment that he leaves the pride and bring him, because maybe it's just to move on. Well, be that. Well, what all this reason as to why this young male is not being answered by the pride, calling and calling. He's not calling. He's not calling. He's calling because was on a kill a couple of nights ago with the rest of his family back to there where the cubs are, and the fact that there's been an area, some influence on whether they aren't, I believe it might be in our lights on again, sorry Vicky, could well be that they're in swing because want to bring him up to where there is another male that might have some impact on his health. But then again, you know, there's another male in the area is going to hear him calling, is going to know there's a young male calling. Could well be that other male comes down looking for him. They did have an altercation a while ago. I've had different answers, I've had different views as to whether they are related, that old male and him. To some extent I have to make up my own mind about these things, but also from what I gather, then I can't really gather any data details, because one guy says that the big male that's with the pride, or that's been chased by the females of the pride, is a male that comes in from Timbavati, and another guy says no, he's the big male that comes from the pride up in the north. And well, I need more concrete evidence. What I need is some photographs of some of the guys to show me who the males are. It's not helping me very much with all the different decisions that I'm getting from different people as to who exactly this lion is. Not him, I'm talking about the one that's been chased by the females, and whether it was also one guy told me that big male that's being chased by the females, because he was being chased a couple of weeks ago, saying that this male is his younger brother, and that's why they're not having fights. I think it's up to us to establish our own idea about all. Yeah, but then we'd be losing picture more than we'd be losing sound. Anyways, we're back again, and while we're back again, I'm just going to say goodbye, folks. It's really... I don't have a cell phone. Anyway, we're back to say everyone, and really down, and... See you 6:30. Tony Bush, do join us, and let's see if we can follow on the saga of this young male lion. But goodbye all from me and Becky and Andy and everyone else, all the other guys that are on leave at the moment, and Wilder. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the questions. I'll try and answer some of them by email when I get back to camp, or otherwise we just carry on tomorrow. Tomorrow's another day. Mañana. Bye.